Hello, and welcome back to Sex, Love, and the Self. I hope you've had a wonderful week. Things in my little corner of the world here, south of the equator, are particularly wonderful. As regular listeners know, I've been enjoying the company of an especially delightful man for almost 2 months, which actually made the brunch invitation I received that much more wonderful. As Carrie Bradshaw once said, one of the best things about being in a great relationship, or whatever this is that I'm in, is being comfortable enough to leave it once in a while. So Sunday morning came, and it was a beautiful day. In Bogota, we don't get a lot of those. Often it's rainy and gray, and this was just a particularly delightful Sunday, made ever better by the fact that I was going to get to go have brunch with a couple of English-speaking friends. So I ordered my Uber to the restaurant, and a couple of minutes later, I got the notification that the driver had canceled. And that's not all that rare here, but not great. So they were, the app does its thing and it's looking for another driver. Another driver confirmed and then canceled. By the time the third driver had canceled, I was sure I was going to have to drive myself to the restaurant, which I didn't want to do because, maybe there would be mimosas or something. So just before I gave up and canceled my request altogether, I got another confirmation, the final one. And the guy was like right there at the house. All I had to do was run downstairs. So I got all my stuff together, ran downstairs, jumped in his car, and he's just this sweet older man, so kind, but immediately he mentioned that his app wasn't working well, that he didn't know exactly where we were going. So I pulled up the restaurant directions on my phone and we proceeded along the route, the best that we could. In the meantime, he was narrating to me the reason why my other drivers had canceled, because it was the Colombian version of the Tour de France that weekend. And so there were, massive road closures for all these bikes to go by. So quick little sidebar, if you want to see that, there's a short video of it on my Instagram page, SD Girl in the Third World. But anyway, so as we were heading toward the restaurant, I was realizing that my phone is giving completely different directions than his. And I mentioned this to him several times with the kind of lighthearted, I'm a gringa, I don't really know, I haven't lived here all that long. Also, my directions are showing us going right at all of these intersections and you're going left. And he kept saying, I'm certain that we're going in the right direction. I know that I've got this handled. Don't worry about it. You're going to get there fine. And he sweetly distracted me with stories about where he was from and this wonderful restaurant that's in his hometown, not far from here. He even gave me the contact of the restaurant owner because the gentleman is from the United States, assuming that maybe I would like to go and enjoy a meal there. Just the sweetest human. And he was so sure we were going in the right direction. And he's Colombian, and he's lived in Bogota for I don't even know how many years, way longer than I have. The point is, it felt right to give him the benefit of the doubt, which I did. And I continued to get more and more concerned the closer and closer we got, because my app was still saying 30 minutes to arrive at the restaurant, and I was already 15 minutes late. So we get to the drop-off point, and I look out through his driver's side window, and there's no restaurant there. My restaurant is not there, the place that I need to go, the place that I should have been 20 minutes ago, the place where people are waiting for me to be able to order their food. And I was pissed. And he said, well, I didn't change anything in the app, and I've got another ride. And I said, so you're going to leave me in the wrong place on a day when it's particularly hard to get a cab around here to get home by myself? And he kind of mumbled and moved, uncomfortably, whatever. So I asked him defeatedly to just take me home and that I would get him there. And in the meantime, I sent a message to one of the girls that was at the brunch and said, will you send me your live location so that I can just, see by chance if we're close enough to make it? And she did. And it turns out we were only 5 minutes away. Not a big deal. So I asked him if he would take me there, and I guided him with my live location map to the restaurant. And all the while, I'm criticizing him in my mind. If he just would have listened to me in the 3 times that I brought it up over a 10-minute trip, that I was sure we were going in the wrong direction. And as I'm running down these reasons why I was right in standing up for myself and perhaps being a little harsh with this gentleman, I got this ring in my left ear, which I ignored. If you're curious about what that means, check it out on Patreon. I'm not going to get into it here. But in any case, in general, it means leave it alone. Stop. Go no further. But like I said, I ignored it. And I was actually so proud of myself for standing up for myself. I feel like I have been taken advantage of so many times in this country because I don't speak the language, because the money's foreign to me, all of the things over the years that I've been traveling here, whatever. And I don't mean to imply that those people intended to take advantage of me, just that because I was a new person in a new place that didn't actually know the rules, I was taken advantage of. The point is, I was proud of standing up for myself because I don't do that often. Even in my life in the United States, I almost never did that. So as I was mentally fluffing my feathers, I realized we were going back to the exact neighborhood we had just come from. So I had him drop me off at a stoplight because it was actually easier for him. And as I got out of the car and started walking down the street, I realized this was exactly where he had dropped me off. He had dropped me off in the right place. He knew where we were. I just couldn't see the restaurant sign out his window, out the driver's window. And I felt so bad. First, of course, because I didn't like to be wrong. I mean, nobody, I don't think, really loves to be wrong. But that wasn't the core of the emotional situation. That wasn't where my intense reaction was really coming from. And so the thing I want to talk about today is what I actually noticed in this opportunity that the universe gave me to grow with lots of hindsight and calm patience later. The thing is, this kind of situation happens often in our lives, in all kinds of relationships for all kinds of reasons. We have a conflict with someone and there's like a shift in our energy, in our emotions. In my case with the Uber guy, I got so high and mighty. I felt so self-righteous. And when this happens, it's happened before many times in my life. I can literally feel it in my body. It's like the dark side of being empowered. But I'm learning what it actually is, I think, is that my ego feels empowered. That personality self that puffs up and says, I'm right and they're wrong. And it feels literally puffy, big, inflated. My energy, my body. So I'm discovering that that sensation is that it's a sign that this is not really my soul self in this moment. And the thing is, the ego isn't inherently bad. Our egos are part of us. That is our personality, the way that we engage with the world. We need that. However, letting that be the root of an emotional response, particularly one that ends up criticizing someone else, that's not great at all. And that's exactly what happens in other relationships when there's conflict. I get all puffed up, I get defensive, I double down on my rightness, and I look for ways the other person was wrong. And I know I'm not alone in this. I know lots of us do this, which makes me think that it's a very human thing. The irony is that very often when we feel that kind of defensive, it's because we are actually in the wrong. Either we literally did something wrong, or we misunderstood a situation, or we misunderstood the other person or people involved. We have this perception in the moment of being attacked in some way or of being taken advantage of. And even when we can admit that we were wrong, there's probably fear or shame that goes along with that. One of the beautiful truths, however, is that in all honesty, we probably aren't actually wrong. And I don't mean that to pretend that we're all right. We can't all be right all the time. However, when we're wrong, for those of us that don't have, bad intentions, we're probably wrong because we just didn't have all the information. And that, in the context of a conflict or argument, discussion, whatever, isn't actually a constructive path forward because it just dissolves into this useless debate about perceived facts and what isn't constructive in solving the relationship conflict. However, I think where we can make these interactions constructive is in looking for where we were wrong and owning that. And I know for some people that can sound scary, and I understand that completely. Of course, like I said, it's a human thing to not want to be wrong, and it's a human thing to be embarrassed or ashamed or afraid even of being wrong or of being seen as wrong by other people. But for me, a long time ago, I found such a power and liberation in admitting that I was wrong or am wrong in any given situation. Because there's nothing wrong with being wrong once in a while. That's just a human thing. And taking ownership of that actually makes me feel more powerful because now I don't have to pretend to hide this thing that I know that I was wrong about. And the other person is probably going to find out that I was wrong about and then know that I knew and double down on it. And even if none of that actually happens, The deeper point is that I don't have to hold on to a fragile, fake perception of perfect. I don't have to try to create a version of myself that is perfect in the world in front of everyone in order to feel safe and loved. I can give that to myself. I'm strong enough to bear the weight of criticism and judgment when I am wrong and the other person perhaps has the right to be somewhat critical or have a judgment about it. I can just know that I'm human, accept that truth, and love myself anyway, which is, of course, where this value of self-love comes in again. And this idea that I always go back to, that we don't have to be perfect in the eyes of others if we can accept and love ourselves wholly. In that, we can also accept that others might be critical of us, but we don't have to be ashamed of that because we know we're human and we love ourselves anyway. It's like being able to walk into the warm embrace of the closest person in your life all the time because it's you loving you. My point is, we don't have to embrace the fear or shame. It's human to be wrong and to be defensive or self-righteous or whatever. We are human. However, in those moments when we are wrong, when we realize that, I think we can take ownership of that because defensiveness itself is not the problem. Of course, we can and need to be able to stand up for ourselves sometimes. Defensiveness in and of itself is a version of self-protection and therefore necessary. I think it becomes a problem when we try to make ourselves, quote, right in a situation, like righter than the other person, or even seek to be perceived as perfect in some way. Or when we're coming from an emotional place of shame or anger, when we're reacting to our perception of the way someone is treating us and letting that define how we treat them, which of course means we're just manifesting the energy of superiority based on our perception of their analysis, their emotions, and based on our perception of who that person is and, quote, should be, about how they should be in their lives, in the role that they play in our lives. But the other beautiful little awareness that I had in this interaction with the Uber driver is this reality that in these frictions in our relationships, there's also an opportunity for me to accept that I've created this situation, this conflict, this friction, whatever, with this other person on a soul level, on a God force energy level for some reason. Like there's something that I could learn from this. And I can keep in mind that even if another person is attacking me in some way, it's likely because they're defensive about something. They're afraid they're going to lose something, money, power, the relationship itself, whatever. Or they're afraid of the way that they think I'm going to see them. And so I can hold compassion for that and release any feelings of needing to defend myself from an attack that may not actually be an attack. Of course, there are myriad reasons why a person would go on the offensive and actually, quote, attack us in some way, and we don't have to put up with that. But instead of getting defensive or self-righteous or attacking back, we can take our power back by admitting we were wrong too, and then looking for ways that this conflict is good for us. Not to diminish the emotion. We need to be able to feel that emotion. We need to be able to know ourselves in that way. But in looking for the way that this conflict is good for us, in looking for the way that our soul self may have created this situation for us, we may be able to see the ways in which the universe is working in our favor, because our higher selves, our soul selves, are always working in our favor. So maybe there's something that we can learn from this. In my reflections, I realized that if I'd had another driver that had listened to me and followed my directions, I really would have been at the wrong restaurant 30 minutes away from where I had wanted to be. The situation with the Uber driver showed me a lot of things, and the biggest thing was that mostly I was pissed at myself because I didn't listen to myself, my soul self, that ear ring, telling me to pull back, to not get up into my high horse saddle and criticize and judge this man, even if I did it in my own mind. And I was pissed because I finally felt like I stood up for myself, and I was wrong. As I continued to reflect on those feelings, what I discovered is that perhaps I've conditioned myself to protect myself from being taken advantage of to the point that I've developed a bit of a trust issue, and that's on me to work on. It also reminded me that I'm a human. I mess shit up, and I just have to be okay with that part of me. We have to radically accept our shortcomings. I have to radically accept my shortcomings, the times that I'm wrong. Because empowering myself, empowering ourselves, doesn't mean we'll always be right. It means we'll always be strong enough to stand up for our perspective, bear the judgment or criticism of others regardless of our rightness, and be powerful enough to admit when we are wrong. In relationships of all kinds, I can empower myself by taking a step back and owning whatever way I was wrong too. I can command respect and also leave space for the other person to be right. I can keep my ego self in check and choose to believe that my higher self, my God force energy, universe, whatever it is always looking out for me, even if it doesn't feel that way. In the end, I tried to send the Uber driver an "I'm sorry, you were right" kind of message, but the app doesn't allow it. So I sent him a big tip and gave him a 5-star review. I hope he understands what I mean by that. I hope you all have a week filled with moments in which you empower yourself to love you and your life more. Join me back here next week for another random musing on this wild little adventure of being human. If you liked this podcast, please remember to subscribe and join us on Patreon, where you can support the podcast and get access to all kinds of other materials. Stories about my life in a third world country, the nitty-gritty details about the ways my relationships are inspiring my growth, the tips and tricks I use to change my energy and create a life I love living, all kinds of stuff. All of that's over at patreon.com/author Jacqueline Lene. And if you'd like to jump into your own personal empowerment or self-love journey, check out my website where I offer books, workshops, personal support programs, even customized meditations, anything and everything I can do to help you on your journey. I want to be able to play that role, to cheerlead you, to support you in whatever way I can. All of those tools are available at authorjacquelinelanae.com. That's JACLYNLANAE. And as always, if you have any feedback or would like to reach out to contact me for any reason, please feel free. All of my links are available on Linktree. That's linktr.ee/Jacqueline Lene. Love and blessings. Ciao for now.